Most people are convinced that they're simply unlucky, that others seem to encounter opportunities, people, and lucky moments more often, while they themselves always seem to miss out. Most of the time, this is explained very simply. A lack of resources, motivation, or connections, maybe luck. And that's true, but it's only part of the truth. The other part is that many of these people have learned to choose safety too well. Their core life strategy is not to play in order to win or gain something, driven by interest, but to play in order not to lose, driven by anxiety, to avoid risk, to avoid pain. It's important to understand this. Anxiety doesn't just stop action, it narrows perception. When a person plays not to lose, they stop noticing weak signals, people, ideas, coincidences, small windows of opportunity. And it is precisely from these weak signals that what we later call luck. There are biological and psychological reasons why some people have a wider tolerance for risk. They experience less anxiety and tension. They can more easily imagine a desired future, believe it is possible, believe they are capable of it, believe they are allowed to want it, and then they act. Others have a much narrower tolerance for stress. They are more afraid of potential discomfort, and therefore more often choose a familiar, proven way of living, even if, within that lifestyle, their important desires and needs remain unmet. And this, too, has biological and psychological causes. In this video, we'll touch on them, look at some scientific research, and break down how this actually works. Why do you earn exactly as much as you earn? A quick spoiler, you can substitute almost any area of your life here. Why are your relationships the way they are right now, or why are they absent? Why does your physical condition look the way it does at this moment? But let's take money as an example. Why does a person earn exactly what they earn? Enough to pay rent, enough for food, basic clothing, maybe a bit of entertainment, but not enough for the trips they want, investments, capital growth, assets, or other property they can imagine would be great to have, but somehow never earn enough for? The economic answer would be simple. At this moment, the person has a certain level of competence, and the market, based on supply and demand, is willing to pay exactly that amount for those skills. That's why they earn what they earn. But the economic explanation assumes that people always want to play to win and consistently take actions that lead to their desired outcome. In reality, that's not how it works. How many people fail to develop their skills as much as they could? Many. How many people spend more energy on anxiety than on testing hypotheses? Many. How many people avoid career growth, asking for raises, looking for new offers, bringing offers to their employer and saying, "Look at how much value I bring"? How many people stop themselves with the belief, "I'm bad at negotiating, others can do it, but I can't"? Instead of thinking, maybe there are negotiation simulations or games I could practice to build that skill. There are many such examples. So beyond the economic explanation, we also need biological and psychological ones. A clear illustration of these response patterns began to be developed in the 1940s by Neil Miller in his experiments with rats. The basic model of the experiment was as follows. At one end of a corridor, there is a rat. At the other end, there is food, but also, for example, the scent of a cat. As a result, the rat is simultaneously drawn forward and pushed away. How far it moves down the corridor depends, among other things, on its level of hunger. There is another version of this experiment using zones. In Zone A, there is no food and no electric shock. In Zone B, there is a lot of food but mild electric shocks, and so on. At first glance, it seems obvious that one should avoid the zone with the strongest electric shocks, but this is not what actually happens. Rats choose different zones depending on their level of hunger, the stability of their nervous system, their previous experience with similar experiments, and what they expect to encounter in each zone. We'll return to this idea later, but now let's talk about humans. People choose their zones in a very similar way. For humans, the role of electric shocks is played not by physical pain, but by beliefs, worldview, and mindset. The psychological explanation is this. A person earns exactly as much as allows them to remain within an optimal income range, a range in which the pain of unmet needs is minimized, and the pleasure from met needs is maximized, given their current worldview and beliefs about themselves, the world, and other people. Let me restate that. A person earns exactly as much as allows them to feel as good as possible, given their existing beliefs about themselves, the world, and others. If their income drops below this range, the level of psychological pain increases. This activates motivational mechanisms that push the person to restore their familiar corridor of income. But when it comes to upward change, two different things often happen. Either motivation to move upward never activates at all, because growth requires additional energy expenditure, and the person does not clearly feel what they would gain in return. They may be able to imagine it abstractly, but not experience it as a concrete bodily need. In that case, growth feels like a waste of energy with no clear payoff. Or the person does know why they want more, but holds themselves back through fear, shame, or guilt. Because change is associated with novelty, and novelty feels like something they are not yet equipped to handle. Don't do it. It's unsafe. It's shameful. It's wrong. It won't work. In short, there are risks. So at the point where a person currently is, that position is optimal for them. If the optimum were somewhere else, they would already be there. Otherwise, different motivational mechanisms would have been activated and led them to a different outcome. You may disagree with this explanation. That's completely fine. I welcome the discussion. Feel free not to hold back and leave your critical comments below. But for now, this is the psychological explanation of how motivation actually works. The same logic applies to the question of why a person has exactly the kind of relationships they have right now, or why they don't have relationships at all. It is an optimal choice for minimizing pain and maximizing pleasure within their current worldview. You might object and say, "There's no pleasure here at all." And yes, that's true. A person can remain in suffering while still being in their optimal zone. But moving toward a place where they expect more pleasure is associated with greater risks and greater potential pain. So staying where they are feels safer. And this leads to a very important and natural question. Why is the optimal zone located exactly here, in this particular place? So why is this optimal zone shifted to the left for some people and to the right for others? Why does it become fixed in one place for some, staying rigid and unchanged for years, while others develop it dynamically over time? Two people may have been born into the same conditions, for example, into a poor family with a low baseline of what is considered normal. Yet one of them grows year after year, accumulating property, income, opportunities, and connections, while the other stops themselves and remains in the same place. That's what we're about to unpack. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of the very first practical step that can help expand this range, even if only slightly. And if, at some point, you feel the urge to pause the video and come back to it later, that's okay. We'll also talk today about why that urge appears. So, why do some people move toward growth while others don't? Human behavior in absolutely any area of life can be described through behavioral strategies. You may remember that earlier I said the economic explanation assumes that people always play in order to win. They take actions that lead to results, and if those actions don't work, they take different ones to reach the goal. That explanation is correct, but it accounts for only one motivation. In reality, the human psyche contains dozens of different motivations, and they often conflict with each other. For example, a person may want higher income, but if you look more closely, they want that growth primarily through the need for safety. Other financial motivations are underdeveloped. For instance, they may not really understand how to want money for pleasure, or how to earn money for pleasure. And on top of that, this entire area may be blocked by shame or guilt, or by fear that if they spend money on themselves instead of giving it to someone who needs it more just to survive, they will be judged. For some people, this doesn't stop them at all. They have a different mindset. For others, it becomes a very strong internal brake. As a result, the need for pleasure and money comes into conflict with the need for safety and secure attachment. The need not to be rejected. And that's it. At that point, the person is no longer playing to win. They are playing, for example, not to win. There are many such strategies: playing just to play, playing to lose, playing not to lose. Let's pause here for a moment, because this directly relates to the topic of this video. When my psyche is motivated primarily by anxiety rather than interest, I find myself in a mode where I am playing not to lose. And here it's important to understand one thing at the level of neurobiology. Anxiety is not just a feeling or a personality trait. It is a specific mode of brain operation. Under chronic tension, activity in the amygdala increases, the structure responsible for detecting threats. The brain begins to automatically scan the environment, not for opportunities, but for dangers. At the same time, the flexibility of the prefrontal cortex decreases, the area responsible for evaluating alternatives, making decisions, and dealing with uncertainty. Simply put, an anxious brain is worse at seeing options. At the level of attention, this appears as a narrowing of the perceptual field. The brain stops noticing weak, indirect signals, precisely the signals from which new opportunities, connections, ideas, and unexpected paths are usually formed. Information may be right in front of a person, but it doesn't pass the relevance filter, not because it isn't there, but because the system is tuned for survival, not exploration. And this is where the feeling of bad luck emerges. A person starts to feel that nothing is happening, nothing is working out, there is no luck. Even though the external environment may be exactly the same as for other people, the difference lies in the mode of perception. In a state of anxiety, the brain chooses one strategy. Better not to make a mistake than to try. Statistically, this means fewer options, fewer interactions, and fewer points where luck could even arise. That is why in the previous video, we said that luck is not random. It does not appear where a person tries harder, but where their nervous system allows them to notice more possibilities. At this point, two alternating psychological scenarios often appear. In the first one, known as the deadline mode, motivation activates only when the threat of failure becomes tangible. As long as there is enough money, earning more doesn't feel urgent. As long as there is time, finishing the task doesn't feel necessary. But the moment deadlines close in, the person suddenly becomes a superhuman. Boom, 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 done quickly. Phew, nice, good job. This scenario will never allow real growth to the next level, but it will keep you alive. Very often, a person tries to compensate for anxiety with effort. They push harder, control more, force themselves more. But from the brain's perspective, this only reinforces the same threat mode. As a result, effort doesn't expand possibilities. It narrows them even further. After that, a second scenario often kicks in. It's called, "I can rest now." This psychological scenario activates as a consequence of relief. Phew, I handled it. I didn't die. At this point, motivation shuts off, and for a while the person becomes inactive, until the next deadline starts pressing again. In this state, a person may dream about what it would be nice to do. Sometimes an inner critic even shows up and says, "Why are you just sitting there? Come on, do something." But still, phew, I can rest now. There are also strategies of playing in order not to play. Here's one psychological scenario. I don't need this. A guy is walking down the street, sees an attractive woman, wants to approach her, and then thinks, nah, I don't actually need this right now. I'm in a different phase of life. I'm not really focused on relationships at the moment. I have other things to do. This is how he protects himself from facing what is actually scary for him. Oh, I don't need all that money anyway. Relationships either. Another psychological scenario here is, someday. I'll definitely do it. I'll definitely do it. Someday. This is how a person can postpone things indefinitely and avoid entering the game. Someday I'll finally take that course I bought and never opened. Someday I'll get back to my hobby. Someday I'll sign up for those dance classes, meet new people. But that day never actually arrives. No matter which strategy a person chooses, it always grows like a tree from its roots. And those roots are needs and motivations. So even if I'm doing something that I might judge or devalue myself for, thinking, why aren't you playing to win? Why are you avoiding your goals? Why are you playing not to lose, driven by anxiety, instead of being motivated by interest in a desirable future? Here, I invite myself not to criticize, but to allow the idea that there are important, valuable needs underneath, and that I've found what feels like an optimal way to meet them. Sometimes that way is genuinely terrible, but for now, it may be the best option available to me within my current worldview. The good news is, this can be changed. And now let me briefly normalize something. Anxiety and a low tolerance for risk are not flaws. They are baseline settings of the psyche. From a neurobiological perspective, the brain is wired in such a way that threat signals are stronger and faster than reward signals. Making a mistake in the direction of danger is usually more costly than making a mistake in the direction of pleasure. There is solid research on this. A large meta-analysis published in 2021, based on 150 studies and examining 607 different metrics, analyzed how human motivation works when people face potential gains versus potential losses. The conclusion was clear. Gains and losses do not motivate equally. Motivation is significantly biased toward losses, with a coefficient of approximately 1.8 to 2.1. In other words, a reward has to be 1.8 to 2.1 times greater than a potential loss to produce the same level of motivation. This result was found in 93.6% of all measured metrics. So in the vast majority of cases, people were more strongly motivated by the possibility of loss than by pleasure, interest, or gain. Okay, but then a natural question arises. Given all of this, why are there still people whose optimal zone, whether in income or relationships, is shifted to the left or to the right? Why are there people who move into risk and development and others who don't? If motivation is inherently asymmetric, then it follows that for those who do move forward, two things are stronger. First, the attractive force of the desired future is significantly higher. Second, their capacity to tolerate and process discomfort and frustration from potential losses is greater. The pull of the desired lifestyle is stronger. These people genuinely experience more motivation, more anticipation, more desire to increase income, to form new relationships, to take existing relationships to a new level, to bring their body into better shape, and so on. Moving to a new country, growing along a career path there, building friendships. These people genuinely experience stronger motivation, and this is shaped by both biological and psychological factors. Biologically, we are not all the same. For example, the amount of stress a mother experiences during pregnancy has a strong impact on cortisol levels and on the development of the nervous system. Children whose mothers experienced higher stress during pregnancy are typically more anxious. Their nervous systems are more sensitive to environmental triggers. They are biologically more inclined to preserve what they already have, rather than move toward growth. And this is not something that can be fixed with supplements, vitamins, or vitamin B6. The second reason is psychological. Biology is, roughly speaking, the hardware of a computer, while psychology is the software. And hardware never responds to stimuli directly. It always responds through software. In the same way, People do not react to the world as it objectively is. They react to the world as it is interpreted through their internal models. They respond to their internal representations of men, women, money, power, influence, dogs, heights, depth, and everything else. The tendency to form certain beliefs is strongly influenced by biology and by the environment in which a person grows up. For example, people with a more sensitive nervous system and a higher tendency toward anxiety tend to form a more vigilant, anxious worldview, one that detects danger even where none actually exists. This is a way of trying to stay safe, just in case. The good news is that beliefs can be changed. That is precisely what psychotherapy works with. Cognitive behavioral therapy, in particular, is strongly focused on this process. Beliefs such as whether I will cope or not, whether I will be abandoned or not, what is allowed for me and what is not, what is allowed for others and what is not, whether I am weaker than others or stronger than others. All of these beliefs are shaped to a large extent by the environment in which a person grows up. This includes relationships with parents, but also early socialization, kindergarten, school, depending on whether I was able to protect my toys or not, whether I was the one being bullied, the one doing the bullying, the one defending someone who was being bullied, or the one simply watching from the sidelines. All of this forms beliefs about myself, the world, other people, and what is possible. This was about the attractive force of desired outcomes. The same logic applies to tolerance for discomfort. Here too, biology and mindset work together. So, how does work with this actually happen? Any method of psychotherapy aims to move a client's worldview from lower accuracy to higher accuracy. In other words, from fantasy toward greater realism, so that their beliefs about themselves, the world, and other people better reflect reality and become more useful to them. For example, a person may strongly believe that they cannot handle higher levels of responsibility, or that in any competition they will always lose, so it's better not to stand out at all, or that they are simply not made for relationships, and people like them are not really desired in relationships, or that there are no people who truly suit them, that those they like will definitely reject them, and those who like them will never interest them. These beliefs are worth testing. They may be unrealistic, unsupported by real evidence, or they may simply be unhelpful, and that is the first key point. Moving toward what feels pleasant and moving away from what feels unpleasant. This is a basic setting of the psyche. A child reaches for candy and spits out a bitter dandelion. So here we move from the first point to the second important one. Any method of psychotherapy aims to help a person grow from lower emotional maturity to higher emotional maturity. And that means learning to tolerate greater intensity of experience, to contain it, to hold it, to process it, to live through it, and to act from it. The difference between a child's psyche and a mature psyche is largely that a child cannot yet cope with or tolerate strong feelings. They urgently need external help, someone to hold the emotion, to help place it somewhere, to help them get through it. As a person's psyche becomes more mature, they are able to process more complex life events, tolerate greater uncertainty, make difficult decisions, handle setbacks without falling apart, and generally cope with a larger volume of incoming experiences. Normally, this capacity for containment grows with age, but there are things that can block its development. For example, from early childhood, a person may be constantly interrupted. They begin to cry, get angry, or express something, and hear, "Shh, stop, calm down," interruption. Instead of developing the capacity to tolerate emotion, the person learns suppression. And later in life, you may interrupt yourself in the same way, not allowing yourself to fully meet sadness or disappointment or anger. In some moments, this happens because the psyche doesn't understand how to process anger. What will happen if I actually get angry? What consequences will follow? Or, if I let myself feel sadness now, what if I fall into it completely and get stuck there forever? So when anxiety appears, instead of recognizing it and saying, "Oh, hello anxiety, what are you about? What did you come here to tell me? What am I worried about? What do I need to pay attention to?" Because that is the function of anxiety, to direct attention to something. We avoid it. We don't slow down and write out the thoughts, the beliefs, what is actually happening inside, and because of that, the system never settles. It never learns that this state can be tolerated. This is how the avoidance cycle forms. Every time a person escapes from experiencing unpleasant emotions, they unconsciously confirm one belief: I can't handle this. Not because it's true, but because the nervous system never gets the experience of enduring it, and as a result, the container simply doesn't develop. Over time, any tension begins to feel excessive, and any uncertainty is perceived as a threat. And that is why the next step is not to push yourself harder or to force more effort, but to change the state from which you are looking at reality.